Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Dan Duckworth, who's the founder of the Crucible Life, an online community for changemakers, and the host of the Changemakers Masterclass. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mike. This is fun. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I love talking about things where you are, talking about making change and assisting and guiding and empowering leaders to do that. So give us a little bit of your background and then what led you to found the Crucible Life.
Yeah, so I started out as a young guy after college. I got inside organizations, taking various jobs, and I quickly found myself leading change at a very high level, transformational change, working with executives. So here I am, young 20s, working with executives who are in their 50s and 60s, and I'm discovering that they have big dreams, big ideas for what they want to do, and they just don't know how to go about doing it. And somehow I get partnered with these individuals, usually behind the scenes, and basically start to help lead change and coach them to lead change to accomplish their big dreams. And after I did that for about 10 or 15 years, I was recruited to go outside of organizations, if you will, and start to teach other people how to do this. And it was nothing that I had ever anticipated doing. I didn't have a degree or training in teaching leadership, but a friend of mine who had done some work with me as a consultant said, "You know how to do this. You need to come teach other people how to do this." And so then I found myself, the two of us, we were designing and implementing a year-long leadership program, two of them actually, for a global Fortune 500 company. And we just started to experiment like crazy. How do you teach people how to lead transformation? And I discovered something. I discovered that when I would teach from the content, meaning I would bring in the smart people's principles and frameworks and case studies from the universities or whatever, and I would share that with people, they were really interested because that's interesting stuff. But when I would teach from my own experiences, the people were moved. So teach from the content, they're interested. Teach from my own experiences, they're moved. And so
it kind of makes me think of facts tell, but stories sell.
Yeah, very, very similar, right? And I often say the most powerful content in the world is an authentic story in the making.
Yeah.
You share what's going on inside your personal story, and it captures people. Why? Because it transports them into their story and they start to reflect and reframe, oh, if he's going through that, what am I going through? And if that's what it means for him, what does it mean for me? And so we're on this journey developing this program over the course of 5 years, and we start to see phenomenal success. Everyday leaders start to transform their worlds, and they start coming up to us and saying things like, "You won't believe it, but you saved me. I've been trapped in a marriage for the last 20 years, and I just fixed my marriage, and I've never been happier." Or they come to us and say, "I've been trapped in a toxic relationship for 20 years, and I finally found the courage to leave." Or, "I quit smoking after 40 years, and I just saved my relationship with my daughter. And oh, by the way," because we started to say, well, are there any business benefits to this? Because we're getting paid by this company to do this. And they started saying, "By the way, this is transforming my team and our output." And so we did that for about 5 years. Then my family and I had this crazy idea. We have 6 kids. We had this crazy idea to buy an RV trailer, sell our house, and we went and lived in this RV trailer for a year, driving all over the United States. And at the end of that, I ended up back where I had gone to high school as a kid, back in Utah, and was asking myself questions like, what do I do now, right? I spent 10 or 15 years leading change inside organizations. I just spent 5 to 6 years learning to teach other people. What do I do now? And I started to have this huge desire well up inside of me to take what we had learned, how to liberate leaders, how to make them into change makers, to take that and to scale it to the masses, to make it accessible to anybody in the world who wanted to experience deep personal change, but also learn how to lead deep transformational change for the people that they love and the communities that they care about, whether that's at work or at home or at school or at the church or at the nonprofit or wherever they care about. We want to empower them to go through what we call character change in order to become what we call change makers. And so that's really where I got into, mass marketing, retail, I call it retail business, because I'm not actually, by trade, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm just now in this world of being an entrepreneur, learning my way through this and the whole digital world, right? So now we're trying to scale. We started an online community called the Crucible Life, and we started a program, a premier community for people who are really serious about becoming change makers, and that's what we call the Changemakers Masterclass.
I love it. As you were talking, it reminded me of something, and so this might be now our first kind of go deeper point, which is I hear change and then I hear transformation. Well, there's a big difference between creating change and creating transformation, and it reminded me of, like, in the marketing world, viral videos. Well, my personal opinion is there's no formula for creating a viral video. And I know that people will oppose that, but I think that there's elements that are important to create in a video so that it might possibly one day maybe go viral. But I don't think you can set out to create a viral video. Boom, here's the first one. So with that thought in mind, how do you coach people to create change that leads to transformation? Because is there an actual 1 + 1 = 2 and you are transformed? Or is it just like now all the things have to align so that transformation can take place?
This is a great question. I love the analogy to the viral video, because there actually is a formula. Okay, there is a formula for at this moment, at this time, at this topic, with this audience, to make a video go viral. But the capacity to learn that formula and to discern all of the variables that are in play, that would take you, so much time and energy and effort to figure that out, right? So what you do is you start to say, well, let's find patterns, let's find things that have worked in the past and see if we can repeat those or tweak those or so forth. And then we sit back and we say, well, it didn't work, right? The guru told me that if I did it this way, it would work. And it worked that way last time. It might have worked that way the last 10 times. But there's some reason why it didn't work that way this time. And that most often is the human element, the human dynamic. And that is the exact same way it works with leadership. We get to the point where we want efficiency. We don't want to have to think. We don't want to have to work. And we say, tell me what worked in the past. And so people come to me in my industry. I'm a leadership guru, so to speak. And they say, give me the tools, give me the tips, give me the tricks, the 3 T's. And I say, if you want tools, tips, and tricks, you're looking for incremental change. But if you want transformational change, then you're going to have to become a learner. You're going to have to open your mindset. It's not a learner for knowledge. It's a learner of what's really going on in the situation. Because you and I enter every situation with a certain set of beliefs and assumptions about ourselves, about the others, about human social dynamics in general. And those assumptions control our behavior. So we're actually hardwired to create this kind of efficiency approach to our situation. So we show up into a situation and we say, hey, subconscious calculation, this situation looks a lot like these other 3 situations, and I behaved in those 3 situations a certain way, so I'm going to behave that way in this one. And then we stand back and go, why am I not getting the leadership results that I want? I'm doing the exact same things that I've always done. Well, the situation has changed. Okay, so this is why we call it, transformation or deep change, because it's not about tweaking. It's not about applying the knowledge that you already have. This is about having to learn new ways of behavior, new patterns of relating to other people. And guess what? That requires risk. That requires you doing things that you don't know what the outcomes are going to be. You don't know how the other people are going to respond. Whether that's your coworkers, your boss, your customers, the market in general. So you have to take risks. And that is primarily why people don't lead when they have the opportunity to lead, because it's risky and they fear loss. Okay, so that's one last thing I'll say here, and then I'll let you back in. Ronald Heifetz at Harvard University, he says it the best. He says people don't resist change, which is kind of the wisdom of the day. People resist change. No, they don't, he said. They don't resist change. They resist loss.
Oh, yeah.
So if the change is going to bring good things to them, they embrace change. But if the change entails any sort of risk of losing money, position, status, authority, title, comfort, security, you name it, anything that they think is important to them, that's when they resist. So recognizing that about ourselves.
That's a concept that I hear a lot of, like the motivational speakers, like the Tony Robbins speaks to that, where how are we motivated? Yeah, status, prestige, all of that. But we're either drawn toward something positive and compelling or repelled away from something. And he uses the analogy of which would you feel more compelled about? Dan Duckworth needing to, or being given the opportunity to make $100, or Dan Duckworth preserving the $100 that you have in your, bank account. So if I was going to come take it away from you, that would, resonate more, powerfully with you. Like, no, that's my money, or giving you $100. So it's that pull. And people are wired differently. So I really like how you're talking about it's that, that you're kind of looking back to the change aspect of if it's going to cost or, disrupt. All of a sudden now that is now a point of contention. So what do you do about that? How do you get past that?
Well, let's just talk for a second specifically to answer that question about, your audience is largely entrepreneurs, right? And so they're thinking about growing businesses, scaling businesses. Risk is not something that is typically foreign to an entrepreneur. It's kind of part of the lifestyle. And yet if I was to ask you, Mike, I'll just ask you, what is the number one reason why a new business venture or a new product fails?
You don't make sales.
Okay. And why don't you make sales?
You don't get the word out about it. People don't know about it.
Okay.
They don't understand how specifically it solves their problem they're experiencing.
Okay. So it's not that the product is bad. It's not that it's a bad business idea most of the time, right? We hear over and over, hey, it's about what you're doing with your product. So now you have to ask yourself, if you have a great product, you have a great idea that you want to bring to the world to have social impact, but people aren't buying into it, there's something that needs to change about you. Okay? Yeah. You are approaching the situation with a set of beliefs and assumptions about humans and about human behavior, and it's not getting you the results that you want. So now you have to start to take some risks. So I just had lunch the other day with a woman who's been building a business for the last several years. And she said, I've hired, I think she said many, but I'm going to call it 3. She's had many business coaches, even 3, and she says, I paid them thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, but I still haven't been able to grow my business. We sat and we talked, and I was approaching it from more of a coaching perspective in terms of just helping her explore her beliefs and her assumptions. And by the end of that session, she said, oh my gosh, I now see things and I understand things about what I need to do differently. And then she kind of looked at me and said, so you're saying I wasted all that money on all those business coaches? I said, no, the problem is you approached those business coaches with a mindset that said, give me the tools and the tips and the tricks. Tell me what worked in the past and I'll do it. And we have leaders, Mike, come to us all the time. Like they'll be in one of our workshops or they'll give me an email or something after they hear an episode and they'll say to me, hey, here's my situation. Just tell me what to do. I'm a willing soldier. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. You actually have to approach your situation with the mindset to say, I have to learn something, I have to change, and I have to change something about myself, which means I'm going to have to give something up that I care about. So as the entrepreneur listening to this, if you're stuck in a situation that you don't like, you're not growing the business at the rate you want or whatever, or you have a small team that's not functioning the way that you want, if you're stuck in that situation, the question you need to start asking yourself is, what am I afraid to lose? What is it that's keeping me from changing and growing? Now, Mike, to come back to where you were at with Tony Robbins, and he's basically quoting the field of positive psychology when he says that stuff. What motivates you to go into the land of uncertainty? Because that's what we do in the Crucible life. That's why we call it the Crucible life. You're at the edge of the land of uncertainty.
Doesn't that also relate to beginning with why? We can put names to it, the Simon Sinek's of the world, but isn't it true that you need to begin with the end in mind? Let's throw another, Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind, have a why. But if you know where you're headed and you know where you want to be, then when you see that obstacle, then you're like, I can make it through because I know where I want to be and I know why I want to be there, and I can overcome that by going up, around, under, whatever. Isn't that a part of that process? Because now, you might feel like, oh, it's just not worth it. And I was listening to, again, just Tony Robbins comes to mind because I was listening to an old program of his just this week, and he was talking about this guy that was like, oh, I was going to, this person on TV was watching, I'm going to help you get rid of this phobia. And they tried, wouldn't do it. And the guy at the end just kind of goes, well, here's the thing. I don't care about to get rid of it. It's not that big of a thing to me. And you need to have that kind of burning desire, that inner, drive. So if you have that, begin with the end in mind, the why, that's going to draw you and pull you through to be able to do the work that it needs to be done. Because if it's as simple as flipping a button or sending this or doing that, what's easy to do is easy not to do.
It's a great question, and I'm going to give you a yes and no answer because the way that why not? The way that Simon and other popular leadership speakers glamorize this idea of why, find your why and purpose finding and lead with purpose and purpose centered and all this stuff, they glamorize it in a way that loses the power of it. Okay, so what they make it sound like is that you and I all need to go find a monastery in the mountains, spend a couple of months there, discover this great soul stirring reason for why we're going to go, et cetera, et cetera. And here's what I do, because I'm not a researcher. But I look back at my experiences leading transformational change, and I look back at hundreds of stories of people, because we actually have our people write the story at the end of their journey of change. And I have all that data. I look back and I say, what motivated them to go into the land of uncertainty, to take the risks, to face the loss that they were going to experience in order to achieve something greater? And it wasn't ever, almost never is it this grand, I feel like I found my calling in life. Instead, what it is they have a problematic situation. They don't like the results that they're getting. We help them wake up to those results and then they have the moment of self-awareness and they say, this is broken. I'm actually contributing to this. Something needs to change to fix this situation. Okay. And then they start to do the hard, painful work, but also exhilarating work of fixing that problematic situation. And in the process, they discover that they are starting to become a better leader. So here's the analogy that I use. If you're a kayaker, it's not, how do I become a better kayaker? I need to find my why because I really love kayaking. I was born to kayak. I was, my mom always, whatever. No, it's, I'm in the white water right now. And I have to figure out how to get from this point to that point. Safely, quickly, effectively, whatever the goal is. And I've got to learn my way. And so I start to experiment with the way the paddle interacts with the water and the way the kayak interacts when I tilt this way or when I lift back or whatever it is, right? And all of a sudden, I start to get better kayaking results or better leadership results right here, right now in my real situation. And, the great benefit of that is by the time I get to the other side, I was so hyper-focused on resolving this situation that I actually started to change who I am. And I became a better kayaker. I became a better leader. And I take that with me into the next situation. So you see that nuance between, it's not about finding your why per se. It's about focusing on getting great results in your current situation. What do you want that situation to look like? That's motivating.
And then when you learn that then is a trained behavior, so that then when the next situation comes up, then it's a whole different set of actions you need to take to get through it. But the foundational principles should be the same. That learned behavior then kicks in, and you're like, oh, well, I got through this other thing this way, so that means now this one, all I need to do is, and so it kind of gets down at way below surface level. It's like in your DNA, so to speak.
It is. It's in your mental model. Do we have time to share? Can I share a quick story with you?
Sure. Yeah.
I just want to give you an example. Okay. So Dusty joins our program and he's a pretty good guy. He's got a pretty good, setup, except as part of the program, he starts to recognize that he's got tons of turnover in his department. And he starts to say to himself, I think I might be the reason that these people are leaving so quickly from my department. They don't leave the company. They just leave his department and go to different departments. So he says, I think I focus too much on what we're doing wrong. I should probably start to focus more on success. And we call that the epiphany. So he has the epiphany and then the I should. Every epiphany comes with an I should, a feeling from inside. So it's not a tool, a tip, or a trick, but inside Dusty came from his DNA came the announcement, you should start to focus more on success. So then we coached him and said, now turn that I should into an experiment. So he said, okay, I'm going to hold a Friday coffee and cookies, and we're going to get together and talk about what went right this week at work and at home. Now, when I heard that, I was super underwhelmed. I was like, wow, Friday coffee and cookies, taking a big risk there. Not exactly what I had in mind by going into the land of uncertainty. But Dusty walks out of his office. He's going down the hallway, and he passes one of his young engineers. And the young engineer says, hey, I saw your fake meeting. And Dusty said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, I'm not falling for your joke. And he walked off. And this is more data and feedback. Remember, he's a kayaker in the water getting feedback. So now he's interacting different with the situation, and he's learning, oh, my goodness, I think I'm right. I think my people can't even believe that I would want to spend an hour at the end of the week talking about success. Now, fast forward. That experiment happens. It goes on for a year. He pulls the data on retention, and he says, this is his quote, the data was shocking. He hadn't lost a single person from his department in the entire year since he had started experimenting. Okay. Now, let me finish the story with this. I saw him a year later, and he said, Dan, and my partner's name is Sean. He said, Dan and Sean, he said, I have to thank you. You saved my daughter's life. I said, what are you talking about? I've never even met your daughter. You live in Tennessee. I lived in Michigan at the time. He said, no. He said, my daughter made some bad choices. My wife called me. I was at work. She said, you got to come home. And as I was driving home, all I could think to myself was, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. Because that's what I was raised like. And that's what all my bosses had raised me like in the work environment for 20 years. And then I heard a voice. And it was his voice. Coming from deep within. You said it goes deep, right? DNA. He's changed his DNA. And the voice said, no, you should go home and hug her. He said, I couldn't even believe I had the thought, but I went home, I sat down next to her, and I put my arms around her, and she broke down in tears, leaned into me and said, oh, Daddy, I'm so sorry. And then a year later, Dusty sent me a picture of him and his daughter. He said, this is her sweet 16. I gave her a car. And as soon as she saw the car, she turned to me and she said, Daddy, I don't deserve this car. And he said, no, honey, you've made some bad choices, but you're working through them, and we're working through them together, and you do deserve this car. Can you see the character change? Not only did it change who Dusty was as a boss at work, it changed who he was as a parent at home. And that changed his daughter's life because he showed up differently in that situation. He had changed his DNA, or we call it his mental model. And that's what keeps me going.
Because it went so much deeper than just, hey, coach, tell me what to do. Let me check the box. Okay, I did it. Next. That's surface.
Exactly. So that's what we do in the Crucible Life and the Changemakers Masterclass is we are going towards the core of who you are so that you show up differently in these new situations. That's character change versus, well, I tried really hard with this new tool and I got a result for a moment, but it didn't change. It didn't transform, back to that word, right? It didn't transform who I was.
Yep. I mean, let's use our final analogy. We've used many of them so far, but it reminds me of give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime. Well, give him the quick little tool and tip, and you fix that for this moment, but he never learned how to do it on his own and change his internal behavior so that he can then adjust for the next situation, because the next situation won't be the hug for his daughter. It'll be something else, but he needs to learn those things internally so he knows how to apply it for the next thing that comes along, because the next thing will come along.
Yeah, and it's all subconscious. That's the interesting thing about character. Is you show up, I show up into these situations, and I don't really think about what I'm doing. It's kind of reactionary based off of our past experiences and the narrative that we've given to those experiences. So what we do is we focus you for just a short period of time. By short, I mean months, where you are focusing on your behavior at a hyper-focused level. And then it rewires your mental model so that in the future, when you show up in those situations, you just naturally behave differently. That's what we call character change. That's how you become a change maker.
I love it. Well,
by the way,
Dan, is just really great chatting with you.
Yeah, I want to add to your fish analogy just really quick. Give a man or woman a fish, teach them how to fish, and then teach them how to teach others to fish.
That's a great add-on. Yep, you got it. Well, how can people learn more about the Changemaker Masterclass and the Crucible Life?
Yeah, we are out recruiting change makers, people who want to become change makers or take themselves to the next level. And these are the folks that the analogy I use for one more metaphor is, these are the Jedis. These are the master builders from the Lego movie. These are the people who are embedded throughout society, who feel deep in their heart a call to lead, a call to do something for the people they love and care about. And if that's you, or if you're interested, if you think it might be you, if you want it to be you, then come check us out. Our website is cruciblelife.com. You can learn about the Changemakers Masterclass there. Or if you just want to connect with me and get on my newsletter and things like that, it's danduckworth.net to find those links.
Excellent. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really wonderful talking with you.
Yeah, this has been great. I appreciate it, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.